All right, so you wanted a deep dive into the making of Terminator 2 Judgment Day.
And let me tell you, revisiting all this material,
Mm-hmm.
it really hits you how much this film captured everyone's imagination back in the day.
Yeah.
We're looking at a Wikipedia article, some really insightful film reviews,
Okay.
even one from the legendary Roger Ebert. So get ready to go back to 1991.
Uncover what made T2 such a sci-fi masterpiece.
Okay.
But first...
Can we just talk about this budget?
Yeah.
For 1991, it was massive.
It was enormous.
Especially for all those groundbreaking special effects.
I mean, the pressure must have been immense.
Absolutely. And what's fascinating is a sequel almost didn't happen.
Really?
Because of legal battles over the rights.
Will wait.
To the first film. Yeah, they actually had to buy back the rights from the original producer, Gail Ann Hurd.
Wow.
Imagine, like, having to buy back your own franchise just to get started.
That's wild.
And then on top of that, they only had a few months.
To finalize the script and start filming,
Right.
the sources mentioned all-nighters,
I bet.
last-minute rewrites, Schwarzenegger even clearing his entire schedule.
He canceled a visit with President George H.W. Bush
Wow.
just to wrap up filming.
It really shows how committed they were to this project.
And, Cameron was known for being, well, let's just say, very focused on set.
Intense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the sources say he thrived in that environment.
Really?
Like, there's this story about how he shot that iconic biker bar scene.
In just one night because they were so far behind schedule.
Wow, and it totally works. That scene has so much energy.
But you know what else is incredible?
What's that?
The CGI.
Oh, yeah.
Used to create the T-1000.
It was a pivotal moment in cinematic history.
It wasn't just using computers to, enhance effects.
Right.
The T-1000's liquid metal effects.
The way he could morph, seamlessly change shape,
Mm-hmm.
it was mind-blowing for audiences back then.
Oh, absolutely. I remember seeing it in the theater.
It was like nothing I'd ever seen before.
Yeah.
But it's a huge gamble. Right?
Huge.
Huge.
I mean, if those CGI effects hadn't worked.
The whole movie would flopped.
Absolutely. And the team at Industrial Light and Magic.
They knew it.
Yeah.
They were using cutting-edge technology.
Right.
A lot of which they had to invent, like, as they went along.
It's amazing to think about.
And those effects, they still hold up today.
They do. And it's a testament to the skill.
And the artistry of that team.
Oh, for sure.
They understood that for these effects to be believable.
They had to be grounded in real-world physics.
Oh, interesting.
So they studied how liquids move, how light reflects off surfaces.
And then they translated that into, groundbreaking computer graphics.
Speaking of groundbreaking.
Let's talk about Arnold Schwarzenegger.
As the Terminator this time around.
Okay.
He's not just a cold, heartless machine this time.
Exactly. In Terminator 2, Cameron really explores this idea
of a machine learning about humanity.
Okay.
Developing a sense of compassion, even humor.
Really?
One article even compared the Terminator to Spock.
From Star Trek.
Interesting.
This whole idea of a character who, is learning to understand human emotions.
That's hilarious.
Because it's Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Right?
We're talking about a guy known for his muscles and one-liners.
No, exactly. Emotional depth.
Huckles.
And here he is learning how to smile and high-five from a kid.
It's brilliant. It's this subversion of expectations.
And it works perfectly. Audiences were so used to seeing Schwarzenegger as this, relentless killing machine.
Right.
That to see him exhibit these, more human qualities.
It was both surprising and really endearing.
And talk about character development.
Sarah Connor's transformation in this film.
Oh, yeah.
Incredible.
Absolutely. It speaks volumes about, survival and resilience.
Okay.
She goes from being, terrified and vulnerable in the first film to this hardened warrior in T2.
Yeah. Although, even with her warrior persona,
there's this deep sadness to her character, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely.
Especially when she talks about how knowing the future has changed her.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like this powerful statement on the burden of knowledge and the cost of fighting for survival.
Right.
She's haunted by this knowledge of the future.
Constantly aware of the potential for destruction.
Right.
It's made her fiercely protective of her son, John.
Yeah.
But it's also made her distant, almost robotic herself. One article I read actually quoted James Cameron.
He said Sarah believes everyone she meets is going to die in Judgment Day.
Wow, yeah.
The day Skynet becomes self-aware and triggers that nuclear holocaust.
Right.
It really highlights the psychological toll
of her knowledge and how it's shaped her whole worldview.
It's a heavy burden for her to carry, for sure.
But it's interesting.
Because even though the film deals with these
dark, intense themes,
right,
Cameron actually chose to tone down the violence.
Compared to the first Terminator.
They did, yeah.
And Roger Ebert actually praised that decision.
In his review,
Did he?
He criticized the first film
for being so relentless with the violence.
Oh, okay.
So it's clear Cameron was listening to those critiques.
And trying to strike a different balance.
Makes sense.
I think he recognized that the emotional core of T2
relied on, like, emphasizing the human stakes.
Right.
Not just showcasing, graphic violence.
It's a testament to his growth as a filmmaker, right?
Yeah.
He could have easily just given audiences more of the same.
More action, more violence.
Right.
But he saw an opportunity to tell a more, I don't know.
A more nuanced, more emotionally resonant story.
Exactly.
And it kind of speaks to a broader point.
Okay.
About the film,
You have these incredible action sequences.
Mm-hmm.
Groundbreaking special effects.
Right.
But at its heart, Terminator 2, it's a story about
what it means to be human.
Okay, yeah.
Grappling with these big questions.
Free will versus determinism.
Consequences of technology.
Right.
The potential for both destruction and hope.
And then there's this
ever-present
threat of nuclear annihilation looming over everything.
Right.
It's interesting how that fear...
Which was very real for Cameron.
Absolutely.
Growing up during the Cold War.
It's kind of interwoven throughout this film.
Yeah, it was a formative experience for him.
Okay.
He's talked about growing up.
Seeing those public service announcements.
About duck and cover drills.
Right.
And that constant threat of nuclear war.
And I think those anxieties, they're woven into both Terminator films.
But especially T2.
He even chose to portray the nuclear explosion in T2
right.
with as much realism as possible.
Wow.
I mean, the visual effects team, they studied actual footage.
Of nuclear tests to get the details right.
That's what makes it so effective.
Yeah.
It blends these larger-than-life sci-fi elements
with a very real
human sense of dread and anxiety.
A lot to unpack.
One article I read called T2.
The world's most violent anti-war movie.
Chuckles.
Kind of ironic, right?
It is.
But it also highlights, I think, the film's complexity.
Okay.
It's using action. It's using spectacles. Not to glorify violence, but to confront audiences with its consequences.
Yeah.
It doesn't shy away from showing the brutality of the future war against the machines.
Right.
Or the human cost of that conflict.
For sure.
But it also reminds us
that even in the face of such darkness,
there's still hope.
Yeah.
There's still a chance to kind of change our fate.
And the film doesn't shy away from exploring, like, complex
social dynamics either.
Right.
Like, one thing that stood out to me was this commentary on racial dynamics.
Oh, interesting. You're talking about that scene at Cyberdyne Systems.
Yeah.
Where the SWAT team confronts the Terminator.
And Miles Dyson.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
The way they interact with the Terminator.
Who's a machine.
Right.
Compared to Miles Dyson, a black man.
Right.
It's striking.
Yeah, no, it's a nuance.
But powerful observation. It highlights the ways
which fear and prejudice can shape our perceptions and actions.
Right.
Even in, really intense, high-stakes situations.
And speaking of Miles Dyson.
Yeah.
His character arc is
so compelling.
It is, yeah.
He goes from this brilliant
but kind of naive scientist to a man burdened with this
horrifying knowledge that his work will lead to the apocalypse.
Exactly, yeah.
And then he makes the ultimate sacrifice.
To try to prevent that future.
Yeah.
He chooses to side with Sarah Connor.
And the Terminator.
Putting himself in harm's way to destroy his research.
Yeah.
Prevent Skynet from ever being activated.
His decision to sacrifice himself.
To save humanity, it's heroic.
But it's also tragic,
It is.
He realized
the true cost
of his pursuit of knowledge and creation.
It's a powerful reminder that even the most brilliant minds
can be blinded by their own creations. It really makes you think, about the dangers of playing God.
It does. And even after all these years, it's amazing how influential this film still is.
Totally.
The articles we looked at, they really highlighted how T2 changed everything for special effects.
Oh, yeah. Terminator 2 raised the bar for everyone.
For what was possible in cinema.
Think about the CGI.
Oh, absolutely.
We talked about it earlier.
That technology, it paved the way for films like Jurassic Park, which came out, just a year later?
Right, and The Matrix,
that totally revolutionized action filmmaking.
Yeah, with those mind-bending visuals. Exactly.
It's hard to imagine those films even existing without T2.
Pushing those boundaries first.
It's true.
And then there's the cultural impact.
Terminator 2 is everywhere.
Oh, tell me about it.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Chuckles. Classic.
It's a catchphrase. Everybody knows it.
It really is.
Those sunglasses, they're still like...
The symbol of cool.
Yeah, they're iconic.
Iconic.
And don't even get me started on the music.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That score.
So good.
It's pure adrenaline.
Brad Fiedel.
He created the soundscape.
That just, like, perfectly matched the tone of the film.
It does. And I read that he used, like, recordings of brass instruments warming up to create the T-1000's theme.
Really?
He described it as, like, artificial intelligent monks chanting.
Wow, I never knew that.
I mean,
those details, they make such a difference.
They really do. They add so much depth.
You know, we could go on and on.
We could.
About Terminator 2.
But before we wrap up...
I wanted to leave everyone with something to think about.
Okay.
Both articles we looked at.
They mentioned these deleted scenes, including an alternate ending.
One that showed Sarah Connor.
Older. In the future.
Okay.
When Judgment Day never happened.
Wow.
Can you imagine?
It changes everything.
How different would this film have been?
I know, right?
It makes you think about all the choices that were made and how they ultimately shaped the fate of these characters.
And their world.
Right. Like, what if those scenes had been left in?
What if?
It's something to consider.
It really is.
Next time you watch Terminator 2.
I think I'm due for a rewatch.
Me too.
That's it for our deep dive into Terminator 2, Judgment Day.
We'll be back next time with another deep dive.